Imagine this, it's 1940, the height of World War II. And while the entire world is fighting with machine guns, tanks, and bombers, one British officer is charging into battle with a medieval broadsword strapped to his waist, a longbow slung across his back, and bagpipes under his arm. This wasn't a movie character or a myth. This was Lieutenant Colonel John Malcolm Thorpe Fleming Churchill, better known as Mad Jack or Fighting Jack Churchill, a real British Army officer who fought throughout World War II armed with a Scottish broadsword, a longbow with arrows, and a set of bagpipes. His personal motto: any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed. This is the extraordinary true story of the most unconventional warrior of the Second World War, a man who captured 42 enemy soldiers with nothing but a sword, scored the last recorded longbow kill in history, escaped from Nazi concentration camps not once but twice, and somehow survived it all. This is Mad Jack Churchill. John Malcolm Thorpe Fleming Churchill was born on the 16th of September 1906 in Colombo, British Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka. His father, Alec Fleming Churchill, worked as a district engineer in the Ceylon Civil Service, and his mother was Eleanor Elizabeth, daughter of John Alexander Bond Bell from County Cavan, Ireland. Soon after Jack's birth, the family returned to England, settling in Dorman's Land, Surrey, where his younger brother Thomas was born in 1907. From an early age, Jack showed an adventurous spirit that would define his entire life. He received his education at King William's College on the Isle of Man, and later at the prestigious Royal Military College at Sandhurst, where he fostered a deep passion for history, poetry, and romantic adventure. In 1926, he was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Manchester Regiment, and was soon posted to Rangoon, Burma, for further training. But military life in peacetime didn't satisfy Churchill's thirst for excitement. He left the army in 1936 and worked as a newspaper editor in Nairobi, Kenya, and even tried his hand as a male model. During this period, Churchill developed two unusual skills that would become his trademark: archery and bagpiping. In 1939, he represented Great Britain at the World Archery Championships in Oslo, where he placed 26th. He took second place in the 1938 military piping competition at the Aldershot Tattoo. Churchill even used his archery talent to play a small role in the 1940 film The Thief of Baghdad. He was living the life of a civilian adventurer, appearing in films, competing in international competitions, and seemingly far removed from military service. But everything changed in September 1939. When Nazi Germany invaded Poland in September 1939, Churchill immediately resumed his commission and was assigned to the Manchester Regiment, which was sent to France as part of the British Expeditionary Force. The peaceful adventurer was about to become a warrior, and he was going to do it his way. By May 1940, the situation in France had become desperate. The German blitzkrieg was unstoppable, and British forces were being driven back toward the coast at Dunkirk in what would become one of the largest military evacuations in history. It was during this chaotic retreat that Mad Jack Churchill first made his mark on military history. On the 27th of May 1940, in the French village of Lepinette near Richebourg, Churchill and two infantrymen were positioned on a hill, watching German forces approach. 5 German soldiers came within 30 yards, about 27 meters of their position. What happened next was unprecedented in modern warfare. Churchill calmly took his longbow, carefully aimed, and shot a German sergeant directly through the heart with a barbed arrow. This was followed immediately by a hail of bullets from his 2 fellow infantrymen. According to Vice, this was the last recorded longbow kill in history. Now, there has been some controversy about this incident. Churchill himself later said that his bows had been crushed by a lorry earlier in the campaign. However, multiple historical sources, including reports from the period and Churchill's own unit diary, confirmed that he did engage the enemy with archery during the Battle of Lepinette. When his company became trapped after the battle, Churchill killed at least one approaching Nazi soldier with his longbow, then used 2 machine guns to fight back until they ran out of ammunition. Despite being shot in the shoulder, he managed to lead the remainder of his company to safety by guiding them through enemy lines at night. For his bravery at Lepinette, Churchill was awarded the Military Cross. After the evacuation at Dunkirk, Churchill was back in England, but he wasn't done fighting. In fact, he was just getting started. After fighting at Dunkirk, Churchill volunteered for the Commandos, the newly formed British Special Forces units dedicated to carrying out raids against German-occupied areas of Europe. This was the perfect fit for Mad Jack unconventional warfare conducted by unconventional warriors. His younger brother, Thomas Churchill, also served with and led a commando brigade during the war. Churchill's first major commando operation came in December 1941, when he was appointed second in command of No. 2 Commando for Operation Archery, a raid on German positions at Wwii, Norway. What happened next became legendary. Churchill encouraged his men by playing his bagpipes. In fact, Churchill leaped into action playing March of the Cameron Men on the pipes and then hurled the first grenade before charging onwards. He was wearing a basket-hilted sword of the claybag type, a traditional Scottish broadsword. Picture this: December 1941, freezing Norwegian coast, German forces dug in and ready, and here comes Mad Jack Churchill, dressed in combat gear, playing Scottish bagpipes at full volume, with a medieval sword strapped to his side, leading British commandos in a full frontal assault. Some remarkable film footage shows both the raid and Jack Churchill playing his bagpipes on deck afterwards, while the rest of the unit dances a Highland fling. The Germans were completely demoralized by this bizarre spectacle. 2 hours later, the German garrison surrendered. Churchill was awarded the Military Cross for his bravery during this raid, but Churchill's commando career was far from over. His most audacious exploit came during the Italian campaign in 1943 at the Salerno landings. Churchill decided to bring nearly all of his men in a night assault, broken into 6 columns so each column could support those to either side. To ensure the columns didn't drift apart or accidentally maneuver against one another in the darkness, he ordered them to yell "Commando" every 5 minutes. For the German defenders in the darkness, this created a sort of stunning nightmare. The assault had to be carried out uphill across terraces covered in vines and rocky terrain at night. Churchill himself marched just ahead, spaced evenly between the 3rd and 4th column. After the main assault had scattered the German defenders, Churchill did something that defied all military logic and became one of the most incredible individual feats of World War II. At one point, as he was marching through Sicily with only his sword, he and a corporal snuck off and crept into a German camp, capturing 42 German soldiers in the process as he caught them off guard with his sword. Let me repeat that. 2 men Churchill and 1 corporal captured 42 enemy soldiers armed with nothing but a Scottish broadsword. Churchill led this attack with his trademark sword, a Scottish claybag. First, he and the corporal found an 81mm mortar crew and took them prisoner. Then, Churchill and the corporal began moving from position to position, grabbing all the German soldiers they could find. By the time the 2 men made it back to the rest of the commandos, they had taken over 40 Germans prisoner. Reports vary between 41 and 43, but the more authoritative books on the Salerno invasion typically agree on 42. How did he do it? Churchill later explained his philosophy. "I maintain that as long as you tell a German loudly and clearly what to do, if you are senior to him, he will cry, jawohl, and get on with it enthusiastically and efficiently." Essentially, Churchill walked into German positions with such overwhelming confidence and authority, sword in hand, barking orders in German, that the soldiers simply assumed he had the upper hand and surrendered. For his service with the commandos, Mad Jack Churchill was awarded the Military Cross and Bar. He was also recommended for the Victoria Cross, Britain's highest military honor, but instead received the Distinguished Service Order twice. The British Army was both impressed and deeply uncomfortable with Churchill's methods. The British Army was very concerned with befitting behavior and the gentlemanly comportment of its officers, and Churchill was certainly not seen as a real role model for his men. The fact that he ended his career with the rank of lieutenant colonel was perhaps evidence of this. Yet there was no denying his effectiveness. Churchill had proven that psychological warfare, when executed with absolute conviction, could be just as powerful as any modern weapon. As part of the McLean mission in 1944, Churchill led the commandos in Yugoslavia to support Josip Broz Tito's partisans from the Adriatic island of Vis. In May, he was ordered to raid the German-held island of Brač. He organized a motley army of 1,500 partisans, 43 commando, and 1 troop from 40 commando for the raid. The landing was unopposed, but on seeing the gun emplacements from which they later encountered German fire, the partisans decided to defer the attack until the following day. Churchill's bagpipes signaled the remaining commandos to battle. After being strafed by an RAF Spitfire in a friendly fire incident, Churchill decided to withdraw for the night and to relaunch the attack the following morning. The following morning, a flanking attack was launched by 43 Commando with Churchill leading the elements from 40 Commando. During this Yugoslav operation, Mad Jack's luck finally ran out. Churchill's team was ambushed, and the Germans launched a mortar shell that killed or wounded the entire team. Churchill miraculously managed to escape death because he was away from camp playing the bagpipes. He is said to have been playing Will You No Come Back Again on the bagpipes when a grenade exploded nearby, knocking him out. When he regained consciousness, Churchill was a prisoner of the Germans. He was captured by the Germans and sent to the Sachsenhausen concentration camp. The Nazis didn't execute him immediately for an interesting reason. They mistakenly believed he was related to British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. He wasn't, there was no family connection, but this case of mistaken identity likely saved his life. Churchill was interrogated repeatedly, but he gave the Germans nothing of value. Yet, it seemed there was no concentration camp strong enough to hold a man like Fighting Jack Churchill. In September 1944, Churchill and several other prisoners made their escape attempt from Sachsenhausen. Under cover of darkness, they slipped past the guards and made a run for freedom. Churchill was resourceful and determined. He walked through German-occupied territory for days, covering approximately 125 miles on foot, heading toward the Baltic Sea. But his luck ran out. He was recaptured by German forces and this time was transferred to a prisoner of war camp in Austria, near Tyrol. Most men would have given up at this point. Mad Jack Churchill was not most men. In late April 1945, Churchill and about 140 other prominent concentration camp inmates were transferred to Tyrol and guarded by SS troops. A delegation of prisoners told senior German army officers that they feared they would be executed. A German army unit commanded by Captain Richard von Alvensleben moved in to protect the prisoners. Outnumbered, the SS guards moved out and left the prisoners behind. During the confusion of the final days of the war in Europe, with Germany collapsing and Allied forces closing in from all sides, Churchill saw another opportunity. During a power outage at the camp, he made his second escape. This time, he succeeded. He walked through the chaos of a dying Third Reich, navigating through the Swiss Alps with a busted ankle, hopping freight trains and avoiding both retreating German forces and advancing Allied units. 8 days after his escape, an American reconnaissance unit found him walking along a road near the Brenner Pass, about 150 miles from where he'd started. The Americans were understandably confused when this British officer with a thick mustache speaking perfect English emerged from the mountains claiming to be Lieutenant Colonel John Churchill. Once they verified his identity, he was finally free. But Churchill was furious. The war in Europe had ended on the 8th of May 1945, while he was still in captivity. Churchill's famous last line about the war was a brief requiem. If it wasn't for those damn Yanks, we could have kept the war going another 10 years. He wasn't joking. Churchill genuinely loved combat and was disappointed that the war had ended without him. After World War II ended, Mad Jack Churchill wasn't ready to settle down. Churchill served with the Seaforth Highlanders and then the Highland Light Infantry, saving the lives of 500 patients and staff at the Hadassah Hospital near Jerusalem during violence in British Palestine. Even in peacetime, Churchill found himself in dangerous situations, and his philosophy remained the same. People are less likely to shoot you if you smile at them, was one of his favorite sayings. He later served as an instructor at the Land-Air Warfare School in Australia, and it was there that he discovered a new passion, surfing. Churchill fell in love with riding waves and even designed his own surfboard. When he returned to Britain, he became the first person to surf the 5-foot tidal bore of the River Severn. Imagine, the same man who charged Nazi positions with a sword was now pioneering surfing in Britain. According to his son, at home Churchill was a peace-loving and unassuming man. He had a peculiar habit that startled fellow train passengers. When on his way home on the train from work, he used to take passengers by surprise by suddenly flinging his briefcase out of the window. What they didn't know was that he was aiming it accurately into his garden as the train passed. In 1959, Churchill retired from the Army with 2 Distinguished Service Order medals, a military cross and bar, and countless stories that seemed too incredible to be true. In retirement, he enjoyed sailing coal-fired ships on the Thames between Richmond and Oxford, as well as making radio-controlled model warships. Churchill married Rosamund Margaret Denny, the daughter of Sir Maurice Edward Denny and granddaughter of Sir Archibald Denny, on the 8th of March 1941. They had a family together, and Churchill lived a long, full life after his military service ended. He was made the hero of a comic strip and the subject of several books, including one by his brother Tom and a compilation volume by the Norwegian Royal Explorers Club. In March 2014, the Royal Norwegian Explorers Club published a book that featured Churchill, naming him as one of the finest explorers and adventurers of all time. Churchill died on the 8th of March, 1996, at 89 years old, in the county of Surrey. He had lived through both world wars, fought in one of them in the most unconventional way imaginable, survived Nazi captivity twice, and lived to see the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War. Looking back at Mad Jack Churchill's life, we're left with a fascinating question. Was he genuinely mad, or was he a tactical genius who understood psychological warfare better than anyone else? The truth is probably somewhere in between. Some German soldiers later said they didn't fire at him because they thought he was obviously crazy. There may have been as much pity and confusion as intimidation and fear on the other side of Mad Jack's exploits. Churchill operated on a principle that seems insane by modern military standards, that courage, confidence, and the element of complete surprise could overcome superior firepower. And remarkably, for him, it worked. He survived the entire war, captured dozens of enemy soldiers, earned multiple medals for valor, and became a legend. His story reminds us that even in the mechanized horror of World War II, individual courage and sheer audacity could still make a difference. Mad Jack Churchill fought on his own terms, with weapons from a bygone era, and became one of the most memorable warriors of the 20th century. Mad Jack Churchill's life was extraordinary by any measure. From shooting Germans with medieval longbows to capturing dozens of enemy soldiers with only a sword. From playing bagpipes under fire to escaping Nazi concentration camps twice, his story reads like fiction. But every single detail is documented military history. He embodied a philosophy that seems almost absurd in modern warfare. That personal courage, style, and psychological dominance could matter as much as firepower. His motto remains unforgettable. Any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed. In an age of total war, industrial slaughter, and mechanized killing, one man fought with weapons from the Middle Ages and survived to tell the tale. That's the legend of Mad Jack Churchill, a warrior who refused to fight any war but his own. If you found this story as incredible as I did, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments. Would you have followed Mad Jack into battle? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.